and welcome to Rue's Life. So I'm in the shed over at the plot, and today I'm going to talk about the three main pests that I have problems with here whilst growing and how I deal with them. So I hope you find some of this information useful. If you've got any hints and tips, please do drop them in the comments below. So I'd love to hear from you of things that I haven't mentioned or things that you've tried that definitely work. But so far, the things that I'm going to talk about I've found really successful. I just thought I'd start out by popping into the polytunnel. Now, I know that not everybody has the luxury of a polytunnel, but if you are able to grow in a polytunnel, I have actually found that it really does save on an awful lot of pests. And most of the produce that I grow in here, I don't have as many problems with. Because you're already creating an environment where you can close the doors at night, you could have meshed doors or meshed sides, so you can be stopping sort of things from getting in. I don't find I have as many slugs in here. Certainly the pigeons don't come in here, and although the butterflies can flutter in and out, I don't find that I have the same problem in the polytunnel as I do outside. And also, because I'm growing a lot of things in raised beds, so things like my carrots, because they're grown in the raised beds at a height, I don't have problems with the carrot fly. And overall, I just find a much easier growing environment here in the polytunnel. And you know, if I were able to, I would probably have either more polytunnel structures, or I would have had a much bigger one to start with, you know, more of an industrial size. And I really love growing here in the poly, and it also extends my growing season. But enough ranting and raving about my polytunnel. As I say, I'm fully aware that not everybody has the luxury of one. So let's push on and talk about the three main problems that I have and how I deal with them outside. So, the first main problem that I have is birds, particularly pigeons, but we do also have partridge and pheasant that come around and peck at things. And they have caused some really serious destruction, and I've lost some entire crops to them. So one of the things I've introduced is our new owl. I've had him here for a couple of weeks now, and it really does seem to be making a difference. So I bought this online. I did do a little bit of research. I wanted something that did actually look fairly realistic, and I really quite like this one. And I'll just go and show you one of the things I think makes it the most effective. So bear with me. So I think the fact that the head swivels and the eyes are so bright, so when the breeze or the wind catches that and it moves around, I think, you know, it makes it look much more realistic to any birds. I was planning on moving it around so that it's more realistic, because obviously an owl wouldn't just sit in the same place all the time. But so far, since I've sighted it just here, and with that movement, it seems to be being really effective. So I haven't moved it yet, but I could do that if I felt I needed to. So that's step number one that I've taken. And I hadn't had this problem with the broad beans before from the pigeons, and in fact this year the pigeons have been worse than ever. And my broad beans have been really successful over 2 seasons here, just either direct sowing them or starting them in the polytunnel and then transferring the plants into these beds without any problems at all. This year, however, when they were quite small plants, the reason that there are gaps is the pigeons came in and they completely decimated them. Some of the plants, as you can see, have survived, but some didn't. So after that incident, I have put netting over that area. So we've got the owl, we've got this netting here, and then you can also see over my bean poles, I've put some netting around those as well. And then in front of those, between where we are and the netting that you can see, you can also see my pea sticks, and I did actually have some netting around those as well. And what I'm finding is the combination of factors, once the plants are a little more established, they seem to be leaving them alone, so I can take that netting off. And then the other method I'm using is hanging these CDs from strings, and as the wind catches them and they spin around, the light reflects from them. So I'm really finding that the CDs, the netting and the owl are really working, and once the plants are more established, I can take that netting off and it seems to be doing the trick. So that is how I am tackling the birds. So the next problem is slugs, and I'm using again a combination of things to help to prevent the slug damage. So here you can see my beans, and if I just move the camera around, you can see there's a little bit of slug damage on these ones, and I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up with the netting. I may have to move it. So you can see here I've got a beer trap just here, and that's one of the methods I'm using, but then it can also see the damage to the plant there behind that, and actually the beans to the left hand side, I've completely lost those. So at the moment I'm down to having only 4 bean plants out of my initial ones, and I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, so there were at least 10 in there. So I'm using the beer traps, and also we're coming out and picking out the slugs. They tend to sit on the polytunnel first thing in the morning, so we can just pick them off and then pick them from anywhere else that we find them. And I've also ordered some nematodes, but I'm waiting for those to arrive, so I should have had those by now and watered them in, and they would have been really helping, because the time I really want them is while those plants are young. But they should be arriving sometime in July, so they will also help the problem. And then the other thing is, if I just move the camera, so let's just move around a moment. So you can see there in the distance there's the blue tarpaulin, and underneath that is some plastic sheeting. And I did intend to have that bed finished by now, so I'm laying that down to suppress for the next no-dig bed. But in doing so, I am actually providing a lovely little hidey hole, so essentially a slug hotel over there underneath that tarpaulin for them all to scurry off and live under. So I really need to get that up and get the bed finished, and really anything like that and even the potatoes, if I just move those, I'm growing them in the plastic bags, but wherever I site those, slugs are going to sit under those plastic bags. So, there's pluses and minuses for everything that we do, but if we can try and prevent as much as we can, that's really going to help. So again, with the slugs, I'm using the beer traps, which I just use plastic containers which I fill with beer. They do get a little bit of rainwater in them, and when I water as well, but they're quite effective. I have to pick the slugs out and then get rid of them, and also replenish that beer, tip it out and start again. It's a bit of a manky job, but I genuinely don't mind doing it. Picking the slugs off and trying to prevent areas where they may hide, and going forward I'll be using those nematodes. And then finally for me, the other pests that I try to avoid are the butterflies, and particularly we're talking about the cabbage white butterfly. So by now, those of you that follow me will have seen us building our brassica frame, and this is where the type of netting used is really important. So it's got to be fine enough to stop those insects, the butterflies getting through. So whilst the netting I've been using over, which I showed you earlier, across, which is over there behind the owl and next to the polytunnel, over the broad beans, that's great for stopping birds. But if you want to stop the smaller things, the caterpillars and the very small larvae, you do need this finer mesh. And this is actually scaffold netting, and I got a really big roll of it, and that's the same netting I've got at the moment over the beans. And the reason that I've used that netting over the beans is not because I want to stop insects or butterflies or caterpillars. It's just a much easier fabric, if you like, to work with. I find the other cheaper netting, it tears very easily, it doesn't work as well, and also I haven't got it in such big quantities. But for the purposes of keeping the insects and butterflies out, this netting is absolutely great. So I'm back in the shed. Those are the 3 main problems I have. As I say, birds, slugs and butterflies. And so far I seem to be managing all 3 of those. The slugs, I am still experiencing a bit of slug damage, but as I say, I think once we get those nematodes watered in, that should really help that situation. And just out of interest, this is that scaffold netting that I bought, and I've already used some of it, but you can see I've got loads and loads left. I think this is a 50-metre roll, and it's 4 metres wide, if I remember, and I bought it online. It took a little bit of finding to get the dimensions that I wanted, and this is from a builder's merchant, and it's so much cheaper than the sort of traditional mesh that you can buy that's specifically for growing. So definitely check this scaffold netting out if you're looking for netting. So I hope that you find this video useful. As I say, those are the three main problems that I have, and those are the way that I've been tackling them. If you do have any other suggestions that you think would be helpful to me or each other, or if you have problems with other pests that I haven't talked about, I'd really be interested to hear from you. And then if I ever come across that in the future, then your tips and hints would be gratefully received. Because it's one thing, isn't it, reading in a book about something or what we should be doing, but I think tried and tested techniques that actually work are really, really useful to have. Thank you so much for watching. If you are new to my channel, please do consider subscribing and hit that bell to get notifications of all my latest videos. Take care, and I'll see you all again soon.